Hey guys, how are you today? I hope you're all well. It's Economics with Bona. Okay, so guys, now we'll be doing 20 2019 paper, and it's from Gauteng. So we'll be doing section B, which is related to our circular flow. So okay guys, let's start. Study the diagram below and answer the questions that follow. So our diagram has product market, businesses, factor market, and households. And then we have goods and services, then goods and services. Then down here we have production factors, and here we have production factors. So we know that the arrows which are going to the right are the arrows for real flow. This is real flow. And then we have arrows going to the left, which is expenditure, and then here we have revenue, here we have expenditure, and then here we have revenue. So now we know that this is the money flow, right guys? So here we know that this is a closed economy because there is no foreign sector. So 2.2.1, what is depicted by the diagram above? So the diagram shows circular flow model, right? It shows a circular flow model because this is a circular flow model. And then we have 2.2.2, identify one example of a real flow. So guys, we go to our diagram. We have here two examples of real flow. So we are going to choose, you can choose one. A real flow here is goods and services, and factors of production, which here they said production factors. So that is our two real flow, but here we are asked to identify one. 2.2.3, briefly describe the product market. Product market, guys, what do we know about the product market? We know that the product market is a market where final goods and services are bought or sold, right? So this market is a market where final goods and services are sold and bought. We can even say a product market is a market where businesses sell their goods and services to the household. So now we'll be doing our 2022 paper, which is from Gauteng. We're still busy with our circular flow section. So question 2.1, answer the following questions. 2.1.1, name any two types of consumer goods. So our consumer goods, we know that they are non-durable goods, semi-durable goods, durable goods, and services. So here they just needed two, so you can choose any of the two. And then 2.1.2, how are leading indicators used in the forecasting of business cycles? So leading indicators are used by economists to get an idea of what to expect in the near future as they change before a business cycle changes. Another one we can say, they give consumers, businesses, and the state a glimpse of the direction in which the economy might be moving. As you can see, this question is part of our business cycle chapter, right? So 2.2, study the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Multiplier effect, two-sector model. The consumption function consists of autonomous consumption and induced consumption. C is equals to C plus CY. However, every time there is an injection into the circular flow of income, there is likely to be a multiplier effect. The size of the multiplier depends upon households' marginal propensity to consume MPC and the marginal propensity to save MPS. For instance, if 60% of all new income in a given period is spent on South African products, the marginal propensity to consume would be 0.6. So let's go to our questions. 2.2.1, Identify an example of a leakage in the extract above. So we know that we have 3 leakages, which is savings, taxes, and imports. So here we go to our extract. As we can see that they're talking about savings, right? 2.2.2, name any one participant in a two-sector economy. So our participants are households and businesses. So households are consumers, so businesses are firms and producers. So those are our participant, right? 2.2.3, briefly describe the term autonomous consumption. So as you know that autonomous consumption is a consumption that does not depend on income. So autonomous consumption is a consumption that does not depend on income. So autonomous consumption means the spending in the economy that takes place irrespective of the level of income, or the level of expenditure that exists when income is zero, right? So autonomous consumption, just know that it doesn't depend on income. And then 2.2.4, why is the value of the multiplier in a 4-sector model smaller than that of a 2-sector model? So the multiplier in a 4-sector model is smaller than the one in the 2-sector model, because the size of the multiplier will be smaller as there will be more leakages. There will be more taxes and imports in the economy. So that's why the 4-sector model is less than the 2-sector model. So the 2-sector model does not consider the taxes and the imports, right? But the 4-sector model consider taxes and imports. And then 2.2.5, using the marginal propensity to consume of 0.6, calculate the change in national income if there was an investment of 250 million. So this M stands for million. Show all calculations. So let's calculate. So we're going to say K is equal to 1/1 minus MPC, which is, that is the formula, right? Now we're going to replace, we're going to say 1/1 minus 0.6 is equals to 1/0.4, which is equals to 2.5. We know that change in income is equals to change in injections times K. So we're going to say 250 million times 2.5 is equals to 625 million. And then that is our calculations for this question, right? I hope you following. So this is our 2023 paper, which is from the Eastern Cape. So we are busy with our section B, question 2, which is the circular flow. So let's start. Answer the following questions. 2.1.1, name 2 turning points of a business cycle. So we know that we have 2 turning points in our business cycles, which is the trough and the peak. So this question is from our business cycle chapter. And then we have our 2.1.2, how can a large marginal propensity to save, which is MPS, affect the size of the multiplier? So the MPS, it reduces the size of the multiplier as less is available to spend. When the MPS increases, it means that people are not consuming, people are saving more money, so they have less money to spend, which leads to our multiplier being reduced, right? And then 2.2, study the table below and answer the questions that follow. National income accounts of South Africa are millions, which means it is in million rands. And then we have 2020 and 2021. And then we have compensation of employees, net operating surpluses, consumption of fixed capital. Then when we add these three things, we get gross value added at factor cost, plus other taxes on production minus other subsidies on production, which is going to be equals to gross value added at basic prices. Our A is gross value added at basic prices. And then we have plus taxes on products minus subsidies on products, which is going to be gross domestic products at market prices. And then we have our figures here, our figures for 2020, and then we have our figures for 2021, and then we have a B missing there. So we know as we read this table, we know that here they are calculating gross domestic product, but using the income method, right? Then let's go to our questions. 2.2.1. What method of calculation is used in the table above to determine the gross domestic product? As I said, this they used the income method to calculate gross domestic product. And then 2.2.2, name the missing item labeled A. As I said before, that this is gross value added at basic prices. And then 2.2.3, briefly describe the term subsidies on production. So subsidies on production refers to a subsidy that are not linked to specific goods or services, e.g. subsidies made on employment. So they are not linked to any good or service. 2.2.4, how would you convert GDP to GNP? So we're going to say GDP at market prices plus primary income from the rest of the world minus primary income to the rest of the world, and then we're going to get our GNP, which is gross national products, right? And then we have our 2.2.5. Calculate the value of the GDP at market prices for 2021. B. Show all calculations. So we're going to say our gross value added at basic prices plus taxes on products minus subsidies on products. Then we're going to get our B. So we're going to say 5,572,608 plus 633,854 minus 13,965. Then this will give us our GDP at market prices, which is 6,192,497. Let's say it again. 5,572,608 plus 633,854 minus 13,965, which is equal to 6,192,497. So that's how we do it. Then we are done with this paper. See you on my next paper, and please like and subscribe. Thank you for staying until the end. I hope to see you again in my next video, and please like and subscribe.